Have you ever stood at the top of one of those enormous water slides, looked over the edge and thought, absolutely not? Well, somebody has to go first. Not because they're brave, not because they lost a bet, but because they're at work. Hello and welcome back to This Is Someone's Job, the podcast that proves there's a job for just about everything. Every week we dive into another unusual profession and discover what people actually get paid to do. Now, when most of us go on holiday, we spend a few days trying to relax, maybe lie by the pool, read a book, eat too much food at the buffet, and if there's a water park nearby, queue for half an hour for 12 seconds of absolute chaos. But before any of us climb those endless stairs, before anyone screams all the way down, but before somebody loses a flip-flop, somebody else has already ridden that slide again and again and again. Not because they couldn't get enough, because they were being paid to make sure it was safe. Today we're talking about the Professional Waterslide Tester, and I have to admit, this might be the first job on the podcast that I genuinely wanted. Now, if you Google Professional Waterslide Tester, two names keep appearing, Tommy Lynch and Seb Smith. And honestly, these two might be the luckiest blokes in Britain. Let's start with Tommy. Tommy Lynch from Liverpool became First Choice Holidays' official waterslide tester. Not for a week, not for a summer, for 4 years. During that time, he travelled more than 100,000 miles, visited resorts across Egypt, Turkey, Jamaica, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, and plenty more besides. By his own estimates, he rode about 5,000 water slides. 5,000! I don't know about you, but I don't think I've been down 5,000 slides in my entire life. That's either the greatest job in the world, or the greatest excuse ever invented for not answering your emails. Sorry, can't make the meeting today. I'm testing a giant flume in Mexico. Seems fair enough to me. Now at this point, you're probably thinking, surely he was just on a holiday. Well, not quite. Because despite what it sounds like, Tommy wasn't simply throwing himself down slides all day. His official role was much more serious. He checked the height of each flume, the speed riders were travelling, the amount of water flowing through the slide, how people landed, whether the splash pool slowed riders down safely, and whether the ride met all the required safety standards. Turns out, it wasn't just fun, it was quality control. Although, let's be honest, it's quality control with considerably better weather than most office jobs. Tommy later admitted the hardest part of the job wasn't actually the slides, it was testing them when the weather wasn't particularly warm. Imagine that, standing at the top of a giant water slide in swimming trunks thinking, I really hope this is over quickly. I'm beginning to think working from home does have its advantages. Eventually, after 4 years, Tommy decided it was time to hang up his swimming trunks, which meant First Choice suddenly had a problem. They needed a new waterslide tester. So rather than quietly recruit somebody internally, they did something brilliantly. They turned it into a worldwide competition. The newspapers called it the best job in the world. And honestly, they weren't far wrong. More than 2,000 people applied. Thousands of people all trying to convince somebody that they were the perfect person to spend 6 months riding water slides. I don't know what amazes me more, that over 2,000 people applied or that I somehow completely missed this. Where was that advert? Eventually, the judges narrowed the field down to just 5 finalists. Those finalists were flown to a 5-star resort in Egypt. Not for interviews in meeting rooms, not for psychometric tests, not for some PowerPoint presentations. They were there for what can only be described as a water slide audition. Honestly, that sounds far more enjoyable than every interview I've ever had. The eventual winner was Seb Smith, a 22-year-old university student studying at Leeds. Now here's my favourite part. Seb didn't just turn up. He made his own waterslide inspector badge, a proper waterproof badge to wear while testing the rides. Now that is commitment. I mean, I absolutely love that. I feel like if you're going to apply for the world's greatest job, you might as well arrive dressed for it. Seb's personality helped him to stand out. He'd even created his own scoring system, using nothing more than his facial expressions. If he looked terrified, the slide was excited. If he looked relaxed, perhaps it needed to be faster. And if he looked like he'd just swallowed half the swimming pool, well, maybe that one needed another look. Winning the competition earned Seb a 6-month contract with a salary of £20,000, all his travel expenses paid, and the chance to visit 15 different countries. And to make everyone just a little bit more jealous, an all-inclusive holiday for 2 when he finished his job. So, if anyone from First Choice happens to stumble across this podcast, I'd just like to point out I can make myself available. I'm not saying I'm genuinely be the right person, but I'm certainly willing to attend an interview, especially if the interview happens to involve a lazy river. Seb's actual job wasn't simply to enjoy himself. He rated every slide using 2 main categories, the adrenaline factor and the size of the splash. Finally, a performance review I think I'd actually pass. This is where I realised I've completely misunderstood the job, because I genuinely thought someone built the slide, looked at it and then said, "Right then, off you go." Turns out that's not how it works at all. Every new slide starts with a detailed inspection. Engineers carefully examine every support, every joint, every bolt, every section of fiberglass, looking for cracks, sharp edges or anything that could cause problems. Only once that's finished do they switch on the pumps. Water flow is measured, the landing pool is checked, the amount of water reaching different parts of the slide is carefully monitored, because too little water creates too much friction, too much water, and people can end up travelling much faster than expected. Before any humans climb to the top, weighted rafts are often sent down first. Only when everything is performing exactly as expected do trained testers take their turn, sometimes wearing sensors called accelerometers, which measures speed, g-force, braking and how safely riders enter the splash pool. It's all surprisingly scientific. So it turns out they don't just shove Steve from maintenance down the slide and hope for the best. Now, before everyone listening starts updating their CV, there's one slight catch. Being a full-time professional waterslide tester is incredibly rare. Most people carrying out this kind of work today are actually ride inspectors, engineers, health and safety specialists or seasonal staff, working alongside the park's operational team. For those employed as professional inspectors, you're generally looking at somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000 a year. Of course, Seb Smith's job was a little different. He earned $20,000 for 6 months, every flight paid for, hotels included, meals covered, travelling the world testing water parks. I've had worse business trips, although unlimited ice cream wasn't included in the benefits package, which feels like a bit of an oversight. Water slides have actually existed for well over 100 years. The earliest versions were little more than smooth wooden ramps that people slid down into lakes, which when you think about it sounds slightly terrifying. Thankfully, things have improved since then. It wasn't really until the 1970s and 1980s that modern water parks exploded in popularity. Suddenly every park wanted something higher, longer, faster, steeper. Because if one park built a 20-foot slide, the park down the road wanted a 30-foot slide. It's basically the playground version of anything you can do, I can do better. And slides became more ambitious. They also became more complicated. Today's rides are designed using computer modelling. Engineers calculate speed, weight, water flow, cornering forces, braking distances, and exactly how riders will enter the splash pool. Because while it might look like organised chaos, there's actually an enormous amount of engineering hidden underneath all the bright coloured fiberglass. Which is probably why I'm not a qualified engineer. My design process would simply be, that looks fun. Of course, there's a reason all this testing exists. Some of the earliest water parks were a little, let's say, experimental. One of the most famous was Action Park in New Jersey. It became legendary for pushing boundaries, sometimes a little too far. One experimental looping water slide reportedly generated so much force during testing that it never really stood a chance. Thankfully, modern safety standards are on a completely different level. And that's exactly why people like Tommy Lynch spent years making sure everyone else could enjoy the ride safely. The biggest, the tallest and the fastest, if you thought your local leisure centre had a big slide, think again. Some of these things are absolutely ridiculous. Let's start with one of the most famous, Insano, located in Brazil, standing at 135 feet high. That's roughly the height of an 11-storey building. Once you push yourself over the edge, you reach speeds of around 65 miles an hour, and the whole ride is over in less than 5 seconds. Then there's the world's longest water slide located in Malaysia, Penang, stretching an astonishing 1,111 metres, or well over half a mile. One ride lasts almost 4 minutes. 4 minutes, which sounds brilliant until you realise somebody had to test every single minute of it. Then again, actually that still sounds brilliant. I'll happily spend 4 minutes floating around a tropical water park if someone was paying me. Strictly for research purposes. Of course, those first test rides must be slightly nerve-wracking. Imagine being the person standing at the top, everyone else watching, engineers looking at clipboards, someone filming, someone checking the sensors, someone saying, everything should be fine. Those 4 words have never made anyone feel better. Right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Ah! Apparently that passed the safety inspection. To be fair, I don't know what the official engineer term is, but I'm guessing roughly translate to slide operating exactly as intended. Now, on paper, this job sounds like the greatest job ever invented. Travelling the world, luxury resorts, sunshine, water parks, getting paid to go down giant water slides. What's not to like? Well, the reality might be slightly different. For starters, imagine climbing all those stairs, again and again and again, then finally reach the top. The ride lasts about 12 seconds, then it's straight back to the bottom and up you go again. By lunchtime, your legs must be absolutely finished. Then there's the paperwork, because every ride has to be inspected, every ride has to be recorded, every issue, however small, needs reporting. Imagine filling in the report afterwards. Slide number 7, observations. Very fast, very wet, screamed slightly more than expected. Recommendation? Probably. Send Jonathan again, just to be absolutely certain. Purely for quality assurance. And imagine trying to explain your day to your friends. So, how was work? Pretty good. Went down a giant inflatable funnel 23 times. Then spent the afternoon testing splash pools. I'm not sure anyone would believe you. Although I do think I have one small problem. Eventually I'll stop testing slides and start ranking the ice cream. What surprised me the most? Whenever I research one of these jobs, there's usually one thing that completely surprises me. This episode was no different. I expected a fun story, a few unusual facts, maybe a ridiculous job title. What I wasn't expecting was just how much engineering goes into something that most of us experience for less than 15 seconds. Every bend, every drop, every splash, every litre of water, every safety barrier, every landing pool. Someone has designed it, someone has tested it, someone has signed it off before any of us even climb those stairs. and that's something I'd honestly never thought about before. The other thing that surprised me was Tommy Lynch, because on the surface his job looked like one long holiday, but underneath he was responsible for making sure families could enjoy these rides safely. That's quite a responsibility, although I'm still slightly jealous. And then the Seb Smith. Imagine being a university student, entering a competition against more than 2,000 people and ending up travelling the world because you were really good at riding water slides. Not many people can top that. You know, after 13 episodes, I've discovered some truly bizarre jobs. People who polish goldfish, professional mourners, bed testers, penguin postmasters, potato buyers. But this one might be the first where I've genuinely thought I could see myself doing that. Maybe not every day, maybe not 5,000 times, but certainly once or twice, or however many times they needed me, strictly for research of course. So next time you're on holiday, standing at the bottom of a giant water slide waiting for your turn, remember, before you climb those stairs, someone else had already been down that slide again and again and again. Not because they were chasing the biggest splash, not because they loved terrifying themselves, but because it was their job. And thanks to people like Tommy Lynch, Seb Smith, and the engineers behind the scenes, millions of us get to enjoy those few seconds of complete chaos, knowing somebody has already made sure we'll reach the bottom safely. Thank you for listening to another episode of This Is Someone's Job. If you've enjoyed today's show, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow the podcast, leave a rating, or tell someone else about it. And if you know someone with an unusual job, or you've got an idea for a future episode, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. You can email me at thisissomeonesjob@gmail.com. Until next time, remember, there really is a job for just about everything. Although, if anyone from a water park happens to be listening and needs someone to test that lazy river, please contact me. Thank you for listening to This Is Someone's Job.